Hey, we are here, unlicensed counselors. We'd like to welcome you all for joining. We thank you for coming. My name is Michael Simple, and I'm going to start off with just a little bit about what we are doing here. Uh, we have the beautiful ladies, Dr. Como and Connie here today. I'll give them a few minutes to describe themselves, but just before we do that, I want to explain about unlicensed counselors. And it's the concept of having a perspective from both sides of the line. Um, of course, we do have a licensed doctor on on the call, and also a licensed social worker and counselor with their own practices, and they are well into their profession, and so they can provide the perspective that some of us can, myself cannot. And so I do consider myself knowledgeable, but it's just not on paper. So I can provide a little experience from my life experiences and what I've seen. And then we have the professionals that can actually deal with the things that are actually going on. And so, with that being said, I will pass it over to Dr. Como and let her give a few things about herself. Okay, and so it looks like we under mute. You guys are muted.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
Good
no
evening,
problem.
everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Cecilia Como, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Texas. I'm also a national certified counselor, and I'm also a certified school counselor as well, and a counselor educator. And so I have about 18 years of experience in the mental health field. And I specialize in facilitating change through various theoretical frameworks such as family of origin, Gestalt, and counsel and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So my specialty, I specialize in individual, couples, and family, and I own my own private practice called Capacity Awaken, and I have been, owning my private practice for the past 7 to 8 years. And I also have a nonprofit that educates, people of color, Black people, on just educating them around mental health and what that looks like and any kind of techniques and tools to understand anxiety and depression and other things, underlining issues. And it's called You Have the Capacity.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Dr. Como. We're going to give the floor to Connie and for just a few minutes. Go ahead, Connie.
Awesome. Hey, y'all. Good evening. My name is Connie Frederick. I'm a licensed clinical social worker supervisor. So, my specialty is identifying the needs of Black and Brown communities. I founded and am currently the executive director of Reinforcing Houston. We are a nonprofit agency that seeks to identify the needs and disparity gaps in Black and Brown communities. And so, we provide 6 different programs currently in a wraparound integrated approach to serve Black and Brown communities, including mental health services, children and family services, community health and wellness, career development and education, basic living needs, as well as we are a placement facility for undergraduate and graduate level mental health interns. So we're all about educating, teaching, and creating safe spaces for Black and Brown communities and families.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Let me go back to myself. My name is Michael, as I mentioned before, and I am not a licensed doctor and have nonprofits and different things of that nature, but I do call myself an entrepreneur. We are into trucking. I came over from teaching. I taught for a few years and found out it wasn't for me. Went over to Metro. Um, as a bus driver and went on to be a supervisor and things of that nature. And then I started a family. And so with that schedule being what it is at Metro, I went over to corporate America so I can be off on weekends and live the American dream with the white picket fence. And decided that the what I was doing in corporate America I could do for myself. And we went into trucking, high side trucking, and we've been doing so for 7 years. And so I think that the well-rounded people that are here can provide a perspective from a lot of the spectrum. And they excuse me if I don't use words correctly. Um, And so, with that being said, let's go into our first topic. And ladies, don't be afraid to jump in when you can. We'll start with Dr. Como. Viral event this week. LeBron James went up to one of the top ESPN reporters, Stephen A. Smith, and had fire in his eyes and kind of spoke to him about um, what he was doing and saying about LeBron James' son. If you don't know, LeBron James' son, Bronny James, is in the NBA on his team. He was selected in the NBA draft at 55, which is a low draft number, which the media really never talks about. But the media has found uh, I'm not sure they have found a place to speak on Bronny each and every day, along with his dad. And so lots of people have feelings certain ways. And so, Dr. Cece, what do you think about that?
I saw when LeBron had went up to Stephen A. Smith, and the first thing I thought about was separating LeBron from the athlete and acknowledging LeBron as the parent. And we all, have been in a situation where our parents probably had to go to bat for us, or, stick up for us or take up for us. And that's what I saw him as a parent, right? I think that people, um, I don't know. I saw an interview, or maybe like a clip of Shadora just talking about his dad, and how, with being Deion Sanders' son, they hated on his dad. So of course they're going to do the same with him. And I think understanding that and not listening to the noise, I think, is so key and pivotal in how Shadora has been able to really kind of shift and not pay attention to any of that, because of how his dad has prepped him and prepared him. And he's also seen what the media and everybody has said about his dad. So it doesn't phase him any bit. Now we shift and look at LeBron and Bronny. And I think the same message can even be there. There's a lot of people that, for whatever reason, does not give LeBron the credit that he deserves. Just as an 18-year-old, as how I was watching an old interview on that, and how he was very poised and how just professional he was even at 18, and people were still critical, right? And I think that we have to recognize that if they're going to be critical of LeBron, and some of the people are, that they're going to be critical about Bronny. And I think, as a parent, I think LeBron is really prepping him on not listening to the white noise. And as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, I think that Bronny is going to do a really, really good job of not even letting it phase him. I think he has a perfect example and a perfect role model to model his mindset and how he just focus on the game and not the white noise. So I don't think LeBron did anything wrong, because I felt like his role, we have to start separating the roles that that people have, or are identifying them. And the role is, LeBron is a husband and he's a father before all of these other things. Other people only know him as that, but Bronny knows him as his father, and LeBron is a hell of a dad. And so I think that that's how he stepped to Stephen A. Smith, like, hey, don't do that, right? I understand what you're doing, but don't do that.
I definitely agree with you, Dr. Como. As a father myself, when you talking about, my babies, everything is out the door when you're talking about my babies. Now, you might have other people that argue that this particular gentleman is in the NBA, and reporters are going to report what they see and critique different games and different things of that nature. And so, because you are getting paid millions of dollars, you are sustained to those analytical things. And so there are two sides to it. But I definitely, if you because we've never seen anything about LeBron getting upset, because he's been dealing with that type of critique for 40 years. Well, not 40 years, 20 years. And so, but we did see a level of emotion, uh, when you're talking about his baby. You know what I'm saying? Now, granted, Bronny is 19, maybe I don't know how old he is, but he's still his baby. Kind of, what did you think about that? We know you are a mother of.
I'm thinking along the same lines. Because I don't care how old my child is. it's still my child. And I get, right, you put yourself out in there are certain things that come with being in the position that they're in. And so people may feel like, oh, because they're making so much money or because they're in the spotlight, this comes with it. You got to accept it because this comes with it. Okay, sure. Sure, okay, fine. We'll accept it, but you're also going to accept these words I got for you too. Don't think you're the only one with the mouth. If you can go on, go on television and be an analyst and talk about this and talk about that, and you can have an opinion, guess what? I got one too. Right? So if you can feel a certain way and express that, I can feel a certain way and express that as well. And I feel like that's what LeBron did. And something else that comes to mind for me is we don't know, from the years of LeBron being in front of the screen, we can assume that he's found a way to be able to tune out the noise. With Bronny maybe being newer to the scene, from the back end as a parent, LeBron might be seeing how all this noise might be affecting his child, that he might be having a tougher time tuning it out. What if he may not be able to, some of it might be seeping in and seeping through. So I can understand if you're at home seeing your son maybe struggling mentally or emotionally as an effect of all of this attention that he's not used to getting. I'm picking up the phone. Wait a minute. And then especially knowing that the people who are talking, who got a lot to say behind the screens and behind the keyboard are accessible. That's a conversation we don't need to have on social media. We can go face to face. Let's talk about it, because apparently you have a lot to say. You have a whole lot to say, and I can't stop you from saying it. But what I can do, if nothing else, is advocate for my child and for myself and say what I want to say too. So you got your side and I got mine too. And we might just have to rock like that. But from a parent, like, all right, you playing with fire.
Yeah, they're my babies. I definitely get it. You can look, and I always like to play devil's advocate, and I'll do that. I do a lot of that, but you can look at it as, since he did that, it's getting a lot of viral attention, and so it may have caused more attention to Bronny than before. But we do see LeBron. We see Superman has a a button where,
yes.
you're dealing with my babies, you're gonna have to deal with it. And looking at the video, I recognize that I recognize the look in his eye.
I've seen it too.
Whatever you do, I'm with whatever you want this to go to. And so I was just excited about it because I'm a big LeBron fan.
Yeah.
People, the LeBron Michael Jordan GOAT conversation is going to be controversial forever, like abortion, in different topics like that. And so, it was good to see. I like to see it.
And Michael, I think too, people are going to talk no matter what. Had LeBron stepped to Stephen A., they were going to talk. Had he not stepped to Stephen A., they were going to talk. Had he not spoken up, if Bronny had spoken up for herself, they were going to talk. There's just some people in certain positions, when you reach a certain level, you're going to be talked about no matter what. No matter what.
Right. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you. So he got it. He got his rocks off and got in his face. So I love it. Yeah. So let's move on to the next topic. I didn't, of course, we're starting with these different things, and so I want to put the next topic across the banner, across the bottom. So let me see if I can do that. Let's see. And so, okay. And so we'll start with you first on this one, Connie. Can a woman display feminine energy, acts of service, while being the breadwinner of the household? And we're not starting with you for any particular reason. That's because Dr. Como went first last time.
Gotcha.
So what do you think?
And so actually, I wanted to hit on this, and I'm glad you called on me, because right before I got on, I saw a post, another nonsense post, Dr. Como. I saw a post that said, if a woman is high achieving and she's already has the career and has the house and has a job and has the money, what do I want her for? She has disqualified herself from being selected by a good man because she's already accomplished everything in her life. So what else can the man do with her or for her? I'm just like, I don't even know where to start with that. I just keep scrolling because it's just nonsense. So back to your question, Michael, about a woman being able to display femininity and, service and submission to a man, even if she's the breadwinner, regardless of how much money she's making, I think it really boils down to the woman. It's
Okay.
gonna boil down to the woman, depending on what her values are, depending on what her background is, depending on what her beliefs are. The amount of money you make may not dictate whether or not, like, the quality of woman you show up as. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain positions based on the money you're making, you might be in a position where you may not have as much time, or you may not be as available or as accessible. But the moment you are, and the moment you can, you will.
Mhm.
Right. So it may not boil down to, are you willing or not, but do you have the availability? Are you making the time to do so? Are you prioritizing? So I think whether or not a woman is willing to do that has everything to do with the woman you've chosen, or the type of woman that is. Because there are some women out here who don't have anything, and they still won't do it.
Mm.
Still won't do it. Don't have
Mhm.
a pot or window, as my grandmother used to say, and still won't do it. Right. But then there are some women who have everything on their own. They're not looking for a man to provide any tangible or financial things to them, and they may be willing to do it. So it really just depends on that woman and her own beliefs, and in the quality of, her own kind of values and morals.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we switch over to Dr. Como. Does her, the wife,
Mhm.
uh, is making her the breadwinner? Does that make it more difficult to cater to a man?
I don't think, not necessarily. If there has to be some type of a trade-off, or some type of partnership or support, because if she's going to be carrying the financial load, I think Dr. Cece mentioned last night, what are you taking off of her plate? Right? Because if she's carrying the weight of the financial load, is there still the expectation that she's also carrying the household load and all the domestic care in the home and the kids? So to expect kind of both and might be unreasonable or unfeasible for any possible human being to do without burning them out and tearing them down. So if there is a need for her to carry the financial load, what are you doing on the back end to offset that pressure and that weight of her carrying the financial load? And if there is a healthy partnership there is going to be kind of a trade-off, because you're doing this, and I understand the gravity and the weight that comes with that pressure. I'll take care of these things so that you don't have to. So I think that there is a pressure and there is a weight that comes with that, but it's still doable. It is still feasible if there is a healthy partnership there, because one single person can only do so much before the burnout happens.
Okay. Well, definitely. We got this topic. I saw a funny podcast. My man Slim Thug, that was on Poor Minds, and uh, you know, some people might call him ignorant and things of that nature. Uh, but I felt like he had some valid points inside of what he's saying. Sometimes you might, like the medicine is inside the chocolate bar. So he did make a few good points in what he said. But it could turn somebody off quickly if you're not there to digest and break down exactly what he was saying. And so what he was, what I got was, okay, I'm a man that has everything together, and you're a female that has everything together. But here's another female, the same female as you, but doesn't have financial security, doesn't have establishment and things of that nature. He said he would choose the woman that doesn't have anything first, because it's going to be against the grain for the boss lady or the established woman and things of that nature. I'm just slide that in there before I go to you, Dr. Coleman. What do you think?
Well, I will say this. Um, as Connie was talking, and as you were like reviewing over what Slim Thug had said, I started thinking about what I talk to my couples about, is that every couple needs to rewrite their own blueprint that makes sense for their dynamic and their needs. And I think that based upon what Slim Thug is saying, I wonder if it really highlights what he values. right? And
Yes.
so and so I think that that's the perspective. I think there's a lot of meat that can go into this instead of just making a huge blanket statement on like can a woman, what was the question again, so I could.
Can a woman display feminine energy, acts of service, while being the breadwinner?
Yeah, I think that that's a conversation that two people have to have. I think that you shouldn't get into a relationship without asking these questions. What do you bring into the table? Or like meaning not even financially what do you bring into the table, but what do you want to do, in this relationship? What works, right? We have a whole house system that has to work if if we're getting married. Like, right? We have a whole house system that needs to work. What are your what's this? What are your strengths?
Mm.
What are your weaknesses, right? Because I remember my pastor back from in Beaumont, Pastor Adolph, he said, just because you're the man doesn't mean that you can handle the finances. Whoever is the best at balancing the finances should be the one that's over the finances. And I think that when you start capitalizing on people's strengths instead of an expectation of what you should be doing this because you're a female, no, that's might not be my strength, right? That might not be my strength with that, right? And I don't think that that is the case where a woman cannot be in her her feminine side or show her feminine side based upon because she is a boss over here, that she can't shift roles when she comes home. The expectation and her role is totally different than being an entrepreneur and having to delegate and do a lot of other things. I think her roles change, and I think that people have to be mindful of that, right? I think that you can't make a blanket statement like that and think that every female that's an entrepreneur cannot shift when they come home. That's a terrible way of looking or valuing your significant other. That you won't see the value in that person if you look at them with these blanket statements that people are making based off of their experiences. It sounds like a couple of males have experienced this and then they went and ran with it and told everybody else, right? But what does it look like to actually have someone that could come home and know how to balance both of them, know how to shift, right? Know how to show up in whatever capacity and whatever role is desired or needed, that's necessary.
Mhm.
Because if the man is sick, watch this, but bills need to be paid. But
Mm.
you're not gonna want her to be in her feminine energy and messing up the money, huh? Right?
Right.
If don't you want her to negotiate if you guys need to have a new roof, but you sick, you gonna want her to be like, well, in her feminine, or do you want her to go ahead and negotiate to get a nice roof? Because I think roofs now cost like 10,000, right? Do you want her to let me see, let me look from a business perspective, right? Because you're
Mhm.
going to want her to shift into a totally different role when it's necessary. So I don't see that being a problem. I think that people just have to communicate and state what they want, but from a I don't know, putting a little bit more sugar and honey on what you want. Not like, no, I need my woman to be this, and if she not this. No, saying, listen, you know what? I desire a woman that can XYZ, just like a female can say, I desire for a male to do XYZ. Right. Like I was saying last night, I don't think that there's an issue with you wanted me to come home and cook and all of those things, but I do wish is something coming off my plate.
So you see, let me ask you this: what if you're the breadwinner and he's seeking feminine energy? And I want you to know before I go on that you're speaking the truth, and I do uh, exactly what you say. I do in my household. My wife does the barbecuing here. Now you know the barbecue is an expected role of the man, but my wife does the barbecuing here. My friends and her brothers, they always tease me. But look here, that's what works for us because her barbecue is good. You know what I mean? And so when it's time to barbecue, I go clean that grill, and then they don't know what they missing. Where the man is, you out there on the grill outside barbecuing all day and things of that nature. They think they getting the win. Man, look, I go clean the grill 9 o'clock in the morning, and I come inside. You know what I mean? I'll start the fire and then let me know when the food is ready. And so I will say that. And so, but when you say a trade-off, and I think Connie mentioned this too, uh, if you're the breadwinner and he wants acts of service, so you're the breadwinner, you're paying the bills, that you are taking care of the financial things, and he wants acts of service. What are some things that he can take off your plate? Because I think some men look at domestic
Mm,
chores at home as femininity.
yeah.
And so, what are some things that he can take off of your plate? What's the trade off in a situation like that?
Absolutely. So here's the thing, we have to look at all the systems that are in place to keep the house, to keep the family in order, to keep it running and rolling. We talked about this last night when what systems are in place. So we're looking at a system from a bird's eye view. What are some things that are happening that are keeping our house running? We know finances. We know if Cecilia got to go and make this money, but we also have bills. We also have house. We also have, making sure that, medically we're good, right? Like there's all of these other systems that have to play, like health wise, food wise, all of the things that pour back into us. And so as we're looking at that, you're absolutely right. I'm shifting with, I understand that men might call that feminine, right? And it probably is based on how they were reared. Maybe they saw their mom doing that and they identified that, oh, that's what females do, right? Oh, that's what females do, because that's what they saw growing up. In my house growing up, my parents did both, right? My
Mhm.
parents did both. And so my dad cooked. My dad is a phenomenal cook. My mom's a phenomenal cook. My sisters, we're all cook. We all cook. But we cook, clean, grass, cut the grass and everything. And I think that when you look at it, it goes back to what I initially said. It's all about the blueprint in which you created your home. And for me, it's when I'm saying, hey, take something off my plate, let's look at everything that we have, all of the systems that we have, and seeing what is something that is, I don't know, that compensates for me being the breadwinner, paying the mortgage and paying all of the bills. What looks like it is like not apples to oranges. We got to do oranges to orange, and it may not even be that, because I don't know anything that could be that in comparison to somebody paying the mortgage and all of the bills and something else that is directly equal, that is possibly in the home. But I'm pretty sure, based upon, like I said, the blueprint of your household, I'm pretty sure that we could come up with something that could really define our roles in our home, that might look, differently, like cooking and cleaning and folding. Like I think that all of those things, for me, it really is a case by case. It's a house by house situation. It's a house by house situation. I don't think it's a blanket, situation at all. Because I also think about, like, if I can afford all of that, I wonder if I could also afford to have like some maid service come in and take care of, you see what I'm saying? Like, if
Right,
that's
right.
a
And so,
possibility.
right, right. And so the thing about it is, I definitely agree with you. And what I hear you saying is, you in a marriage, you have to have two individuals that are willing to work together to look at their situation, analyze, and come up with a suitable solution. You have to have that. And so, I mean, I think it's a really juicy topic, because I think in the podcast, they mentioned maid service then, and so that's exactly what Slim was talking about, where it's different to, I think it's different for your wife to cook a meal and bring you a plate, and or to have a chef bring it to both of you. And then you get into the love languages,
Oh,
acts of
absolutely.
service and things of that nature. And again, I can change my name to devil's advocate down here at the bottom, but I definitely agree with you that you got to have two people that will uh problem solving. Let's dig in. What do we do? What's our weakness? I'm gonna put you here. I'm gonna put there. things of that nature. And so we let's move on to the next topic. And Connie,
Wait,
I'm
Mike,
gonna let you go ahead. Go
Mike,
ahead.
wait. Let me say this. Let me say this. I think one of the things that we even talked about on yesterday too was it's all about how you were reared. And one of the things that I mentioned about how I was reared, even at a young age, on especially on my mom's side of the family, we were reared that to serve, like our dads and our uncles and our husbands and boyfriends. Like that was
Mhm.
a natural thing that we did
Yeah.
in the home. Right. And so matter of fact, like sometimes we talked about like the men doing like the meat or whatever, whether it's like the turkey or the ribs or whatever, right? But the women, we came in, sliced it up, and went ahead and served it to both the men and the children. Then we ate last. That's the
Yeah.
dynamics that I've been doing, for a very long time. Very long time. Doesn't even matter if it was like your husband or your boyfriend. My great aunt would say, "Hey guys, hey ladies, go ahead and fix your husband's or boyfriend's a plate," and then we would fix the kids. Mind you, we also watched it because we were the kids.
Hmm.
We were the kids. So we watched our moms do the exact same thing. And then we would get our plates and sit down. And then also, at my great aunt's house, it would be the men and the children would be in the living room watching football or whatever was going on during that day, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then shifted and the women were around the table. It was a privilege to get older, to be able to sit around the table with the older women. So that's the dynamics that I was reared in. So serving my husband or serving my man is nothing. It's second nature. But you also have to consider not to bash someone who that was not their experience. But if you desire that, it is okay to even say, hey, this is what I desire, or this is what I like. This is my love language, right? You want a partner that if you bring up something or you ask them of something, that they do consider it, especially if they love you. Now, they might not be able to do everything, but they can counter offer and say, well, babe, I can't do this. I can't throw down in the kitchen, but I can do this.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, all right. And that was beautiful, Dr. Como, how you transitioned and seeing what you did growing up, what you saw. Matter of fact, that's our next topic. I'm gonna let Connie dig into that topic and then give someone else a chance to respond.
Okay, so I see the next question is, can you be a good spouse if you've never seen it growing up? Okay, wait, I just got to say this one last thing about the previous topic, Michael,
Okay.
because you mentioned how some men see domestic service or domestic care as feminine. My
Hmm.
question to those men is, if that's the case, why are you allowing me to be in a masculine situation if I got to be the breadwinner? Why are you allowing me to fill that masculine role? So
Hmm.
if you feel that domestic duties or household duties are feminine duties,
Hmm.
then allow me to be in that role. Align things, set things in order so that I can step into those feminine domestic duties and I can take care of those things. But if you feel like you taking care of the household is feminine, then get me out of a masculine place then.
Hmm.
But until you do that, I'm gonna need
So I
okay.
guess your answer. So I guess your answer would be no. Can a can a woman display feminine energy while being a breadwinner? No, I cannot.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
you still can. If the partnership and the trade-off and all the things, you still can.
Mhm.
If they're willing to. But okay, so to answer this question, can you be a good spouse if you never seen it growing up? So I feel like that's twofold. One half, the answer is absolutely with intentionality and growth, right? There are some people who see certain things and they're like, I never want that. I'm going to be very intentional about not getting that. I'm going to be mindful about my choices that could lead to me ending up there. That's one half of it. So the answer is yes. I've seen some amazing men who have come up to be great fathers and great husbands, and they didn't have that themselves. It's because something clicked in them that says, I want to give to someone something that which I did not have. I want to be nurturing and kind and present. I want to do something for someone that I didn't have. So I feel like those folks kind of dig from a really deep well. To give someone something that you didn't have, you are a special individual, because it's more likely that we see people repeating cycles than breaking them. It's more likely that we see people falling into the same habits of you go for what you know. We're humans, we're creatures of habit. We seek familiarity. There's comfort in familiarity, even if that familiarity is dysfunctional. There's comfort in that. We go for what we know, sometimes even unintentionally and unconsciously. You don't even realize that you have repeated that cycle. You look up and you're like, how in the world did I get here? I'm in the exact same situation my mother was in, the exact same situation my grandmother was in. This is what we also call generational trauma. You go for what you know. Like I mentioned before, it takes a very mindful, intentional, special person to be able to break those cycles and not do what they saw. The second piece to this is, because I have seen, and I always like to say, what you run from, you are bound to run right into. What you run from, you're bound to run right into. So there are those people who have had poor experiences, did not see healthy marriages, did not see healthy, healthy relationships, or they didn't see that. So they become almost like out of spite. I'm going to be this out of spite. I'm going to do this out of spite because of what I saw. And what they end up doing is they do end up repeating that cycle, unfortunately, and they look up and they will find themselves in a similar situation, but for a different reason. And I'll give a quick example of what that looks like. So I had a mother that I was seeing, a client of mine that I was seeing some time ago, and her mother was very absent, very abusive, very neglectful. So she made it in her mind, I'm going to be a better mom. I'm going to be a great mom. So inadvertently, when she had children, she became a helicopter mom. Right. She smothered her children with love, and her children ended up in therapy with me because they felt like they had no voice. They had no identity. They didn't feel seen or heard or validated or protected because their mom knew everything. She had everything solved. She had it all together. She did not give them an opportunity to actually be people or see them as people. So mom looked up, and now she's having trouble with her kids the same way she had trouble with her mom. Same outcome, but for different reasons, because instead of healing what she had, the situation with her mom, those mother wounds, she was trying to live in spite of, to spite her mother, and ended up running right back into the very thing she was running from. It was like her worst fear to be a terrible mother, but now here your children are suffering because instead of healing what was lacking or what was missing or what was broken, you ended up carrying that. And now you've passed that brokenness down to your own children. So it's important, though, if we are going to try to do something we've never seen, it might be good to try to get some help or to gain a wider perspective, because you can only see what you know. And there might be something that you're missing, or there might be some residue or remnants of your past and of your history that you may not even be aware, like some blind spots that you may not even be aware of that might catch you later on. So I definitely applaud and give kudos to those who are striving to be better. But I definitely think it's good to maybe just talk it out loud to see if there are any blind spots or any like pitfalls or roadblocks that may happen as a result of what you've been through, so that you don't end up repeating those cycles unintentionally.
Okay. Before we switch over and let Dr. Como um, speak on this and go into the last topic, I'll let her bring it out. You guys, with marriage, like we said before, you need two people that are willing to problem solve, dive into issues, uh, sacrifice, give a little bit of myself, take a little bit of this, and things of that nature. And you just mentioned as well, um, talking it out and things like that. I think that the issue lies where sometimes we know that that's the solution, but for some reason we don't do them. Have you guys ever ran into something like that where hey, you guys just need to talk about this and you can solve it, but for some reason people cannot do that? I mean, I don't know if it's old sin nature or the tendencies of humans or things like that. Well, you know what you need to do, but it's just not in you to do. What do you think about that, Dr. Como?
Yeah, I think that first I'm going to say that change is not easy, right?
Right.
And so people don't realize that, when we even though we know that we need to do that, we've been operating from a totally different perspective. And so, even though we know that we need to communicate, we know that we need to do certain things, there might be something that's getting in the way of us being able to do that. And that's the part where we have to figure out, what is the resistance in doing that. Is it abandonment? Is it fear? Is it what is it, centered around communicating, right? And the reason why change is not easy, people like, just change, you know better, you need to do better. But it is really a cellular thing, right? There are these things that call dendrites. And the more and more that we do certain things, we build more and more dendrites. Now, dendrites are the little grooves that are in your head. Dr. Crystal Collier talks about this all the time. Talks about that the more that we form a habit, it creates these little grooves that are in the brain. So when we're first born, our brain is very smooth. And as we start repeating a certain behavior, we start developing more dendrites. And so people don't realize that when, we're talking about certain behaviors, if it's a learned behavior, it is a very hard, it's very hard to change. And so, but what happens is, once you're introduced a new skill or technique, or you learn that, hey, I probably need to go and work out before I have this conversation with my significant other. The more and more you practice that, the more and more the dendrite of you just abandoning having a conversation, not having a conversation, those dendrites start to die off, and new habits and new dendrites start to form. So even though people say, well, I know I need to do that, they're up against a cellular situation, right? It is ingrained in them to operate from a certain perspective. But the more and more you allow yourself to be uncomfortable while having these, I call them comfortable conversations, because even the word uncomfortable makes people uncomfortable, and then nobody wants to have them. So I say, when we're having these comfortable conversations, right, the more and more you have it, the more and more your body is getting used to having those conversations with your significant other. So I think I if I had a client or a couple that came in, I would acknowledge and say, listen, change is not easy. You're coming in here because the way that you guys are communicating, it's not working, right? And so here's a way or something I want to introduce to you guys on getting how you are feeling out, so that the other one can empathize and understand what perspective you're coming from, and not lean on their own understanding. What we're finding is that a lot of people, one spouse want to talk and the other one completely doesn't want to talk at all. And
Mm.
so how do we get everybody on the same page? Because one thing that I noticed too, when a lot of people are falling in love and getting in these relationships, they fall in love with people, but they don't recognize that a lot of things that they love about them, some of those things show up later, and it end up being the demise of the relationship. Oh, I love that he doesn't go out. I love that he just likes to want to be a homebody. But then all of a sudden you want to come back and say, let's do date night.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
you've been allowed, y'all been at home this whole entire time, but now you want to go out every Friday. And so some of the things that you love about a person sometimes ultimately come back, and bite you on the back end, because there are certain things that you allowed and you accepted, but you really wanted like a balance of it. And so saying, oh, my person is easygoing and quiet and we don't have any issues, but the minute we have an issue, you want him to show up. That's sometimes not the dynamics of what you guys have created. And so now it's like you're being demanding or bossy, trying to have a conversation. But sometimes, the person the quality that you fell in love with generally sometimes comes in the back end, and it's not the best quality, especially if you want more from that person. I hope I'm
Mm.
making sense with that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah, making perfect sense. Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Love the mention of the other doctor as well. Um, I want to be respectful of you guys' time. I know you guys are starting your Monday tomorrow, and I'm gonna sleep in. Not to put that in y'all face, but let me let me put this down at the bottom for the last topic. Um, because we're looking at what is that, 9:01, and we lost an hour today, so your bodies are gonna be definitely adjusting. uh you know Matter of fact, my youngest daughter had to adjust we had to leave her at church. I was like, maybe you need that hour back. I'm gonna leave you home right now because she was melting down because she, wanted grapes and not donuts. I'm like, hey man, you ate. We can't deal with that, And so, but anyway, I'll pass it off to you, Dr. Como, and we'll give kind of the first crack at the topic that you introduced. And excuse that the writing, I copied and pasted. So if I can take that down and you want to express that thought differently, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, so I think this was something to go off of what Connie and I were talking about on last night, where one of the things that I think both of us do with our clients is trying to get them to externalize the labels and the things that they're given, like anxiety or depression or diabetes, or, right? And so when people internalize and allow those labels to define them, that becomes their identity. And I think that that's what we were talking about. And I said, how do we, one of the things that we both do is help our clients to externalize, externalize the labels. Like instead of saying like I have anxiety, start saying that this makes me anxious. Right, you're separating yourself from the label of that are given, or the diagnoses that's given, because then people show up with that. And there's nothing wrong with identifying that this is the presenting problem right here that's happening, and how can we get our people to understand that this is not who you are, this is what you are doing, because it shows up differently in the body when we start identifying ourselves with those different things. And so we were just talking about how to get our clients to externalize. So there are a lot of different techniques that I do with them, helping them to reframe their language, or reframing their thoughts. I also do like an illustration of helping them to externalize, even with the inner critic and the inner ally. Right? We hear these inner critics, that somebody is very critical. I have my clients to externalize, like, what does that look like? What is it? Let's draw it. Right? Instead of allowing the inner critic to be a part of their whole entire dynamics or their daily living. Right? Always, each time they're about to do something else, you never do anything right. I don't even know why you're even trying. And if we allow those voices to get louder and louder in our heads, it is very difficult for us to be able to move and finagle and to thrive. We end up being in a survival mode by being driven by those voices. But the labels, we were just talking about, how do we help our clients to externalize these diagnoses and labels that they're given, so that they can really formulate their identity and understand who they are.
Connie, what do you think?
All right. I would say yes. We had such a good conversation last night, me and Dr. Cece, in regards to this topic of being able to externalize those labels. I do believe that labels can help people to feel comfortable, can help people to feel seen, right? Like if you ever walk into a room and then you see kind of a group of people that you identify, oh, I know them from school, or I know them from the neighborhood, or I know them from church, or this is a group of women when the rest of the room is men, or this is a group of Black people when the rest of the room is other. Like when you're able to kind of find your group, it does help you to feel sometimes safe or seen or validated or understood. So sometimes labels can help people to feel seen, but I think it's how far you take that label. How far do you take that label? Because even in a group of familiarity, there's still a lot of differences there. And is that identity, the identity of that group or the identity of that label, the only thing you are? And it may be helping clients to recognize that you are more than just that label. And if you don't know, you're gonna find out in session. But that's why you're here, so that you can learn that you are more than that label, because that label is twofold. If we're only identifying as that label, if you don't have that label, then who are you? Right. And sometimes even holding on to that label and identifying that label will hinder a client's ability to progress and heal, because of the fear is, if I heal from anxiety, and I only know myself to be anxious, right? And I only know myself to have anxiety, but now they're trying to tell me I don't, I'm managing my anxiety well, and my GAD scores are really low, and I'm functioning better. So who am I? Who am I? Let me go get some more anxiety. Let me go find me another label. Let me go get me another diagnosis, because who am I if I'm not that label? So it would be harmful to identify only as that label, not understanding the multi intersections and the multi layers and complexities of who we are as people. It can be very harmful if that's what you're anchoring yourself and your identity to, almost like putting your eggs in one basket. First of all, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Like, you are minimizing the significance and value of all the layers that you have, if all you're doing is recognizing yourself as a label. Because if you heal from that, if you manage that, if that thing is no longer an issue for you anymore, if you're cured from it, whatever it may be, then what? Where do you go? What do you do? Who are you?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I think that kind of ties in with some fraternity things that things are people are dealing with denouncing and things of that nature because their identity is set up through the fraternity. Now I'm fairly new to it, and we won't go deep into that, but a lot of people find their identity inside of the fraternity or sorority, and that's why after time it's a big catastrophe, like who am I and things of that nature. Um, and so, man, you know what? I think 4 topics took us almost to an hour, and we kind of rushed through. And so, I think this is good that we you had the little practice run and went through 4 topics. I'm gonna swing it over to you guys just for some last thoughts, and then we can close it out because I know you may have a last thought, or maybe you don't. You don't have to. Um, let's see. We'll start with Dr. Como. Any last thoughts?
I would just say that I think this is a really good, platform that you are starting. I think that these are important topics that our community are talking about. I think to hear from different perspectives is always a really good thing. I think for the community to also see that male and females, Black male and females, how we can agree to disagree or even come together and on important topics as we try to pour into our community. I think that these conversations are super important because we want our people that look like us to be the best version of ourselves. I think
Mhm.
that a lot of our journey as Black people, Black Americans, um, really has been formed around systemic issues, systemic oppression, the things that we have gone through, when the enslaved ancestors of ours that went through. And so we've been trying to navigate different spaces and kind of redefine what family looks like, what couples look like, what individuals look like, right? And so these topics are super important because we're trying to redefine things from a healthy perspective and not what we were told, not from a systemic oppressed lens, but also how do we, which is one of my specialties, how do we restore our community, how do we restore our lives individually from a healthy perspective, right? And I think that this is why these topics are super important. Mental health is super important because we just want people to be well, right? Like not just
Mhm.
medically, not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. Those are all like from a wholeness, from a whole perspective, right? From a wellness perspective, a holistic perspective is what I was trying to look for, a holistic perspective. And so I think that this platform is super It's really good because it helps give people insight into how they can navigate their own lives, to be better, to be a better version of themselves.
Okay, okay, love it. Looks like we lost kind of, may have been connection or something like that. And so with that, we're going to give the benediction. We're going to let you guys get along with your week. Best blessings to your week this week, and we will convene at another time. And thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Have a good one.